Francis is getting a warm welcome in Mexico, home to some 100 million Catholics. There's a chill in the air at security talks involving Syria. In fact, Russia's prime minister says his country's relations with the West are like a new Cold War.
No better panel.
And the war of words between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz is heating up. Trump says it could end up in court. Hello, I'm Lynda Kinkade. Welcome to CNN Newsroom. Thanks for joining us. Of the Roman Catholic Church is meeting with Mexico's bishops. It's part of his busy public schedule on his first full day in Mexico. He began the morning in a very Pope Francis-like manner among the faithful, blessing several followers. Then it was on to Mexico's National Palace for a meeting with the president and a formal welcome ceremony. Large crowds can be seen across the city, people with their cell phones out, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Pope. CNN Shasta Darlington is amongst it all in Mexico City. Shasta, just give us a sense of what the atmosphere is like and the security situation.
Well, Lynda, there is a lot of excitement. We're just at one of the many points along the papal route today. He's going to be all over the city. People are lining up, as you can see. They're hoping to catch him on his way to get lunch at the Vatican residence just down this street behind me. But again, last night there were 300,000 people out on the street. Today they expect up to 1 million people. They've got a lot of songs prepared. One of the chants that we've heard is Francis, brother, you're already Mexican. And there's some people right behind us also with I love Paquito. So a lot of excitement, and we expect to just see it growing over the next 5 days, Lynda.
A huge crowd there gathering behind you. Of course, the Pope just spoke recently at the presidential palace, and he did denounce the path of privilege that creates what he called a fertile soil for corruption, drug trade, exclusion of different cultures, violence, and also human trafficking, kidnapping, and death. He certainly is not shying away from addressing the problems there.
No, he's not, Lynda. And as you've pointed out, he said this in front of the president of Mexico. This is exactly what he said he was going to do. He said that he was not going to brush the problems under the rug. He wanted to shine a light on those problems. And I think it's interesting that he also gave a very good reason for why they need to be addressed today. Take a listen to this.
Just over half of the population is made up of youth. This makes it possible to contemplate and plan for a future, for tomorrow. This offers hope and future prospects. A people with a youthful population is a people able to renew and transform itself. It is an invitation to look to the future with hope, and in turn, it challenges us.
You know, we've heard over and over again, Lynda, that when Pope Francis talks about the problems that we are going to be leaving the youth of this world, and he clearly thinks that Mexico needs to clean up its act because so many people, young people, are here and will inherit that.
And as you mentioned, Shasta, the president was at that address at the palace. His approval ratings are low right now. There have been a lot of horrific incidents in Mexico, the recent prison riot that left 49 people dead and the disappearance of the 43 students. Could the Pope's visit in any way help him?
I think that's a tough call, Lynda. Obviously, the President Peña Nieto would like to think so, but there's actually been some backlash against the Pope because people who are opposed to him, who think that he isn't doing enough to rein in corruption and violence and drug trafficking, that he will get a bump from this. And so we've seen some hashtags out there, yo no quiero el Papa, you know, no quiero que el Papa venga, we don't want the Pope to come. So we see a little bit of both. This is obvious. It's interesting. The president did invite Pope Francis into the National Palace. That's the first time any pope has been in the National Palace because up until recently, relations weren't that great with church and state. So he is trying to take advantage of this, whether or not he'll be able to, or whether or not we're going to hear so many sort of subtle criticisms from the Pope that it makes it hard for him to benefit. Well, we'll only find out over the next 5 days, Lynda.
We certainly will. We will talk to you again soon, no doubt. Shasta Darlington in Mexico City, awaiting the Pope in his Pope-mobile. Thank you very much. Mexico, of course, is an extremely important country for the Roman Catholic Church. CNN Senior Vatican analyst John Allen joins us via Skype from Denver, Colorado. Great to have you with us, John. Now, the Pope has been meeting with Mexican bishops. Earlier, we heard his message to the president and the people in the palace. What do you think his message will be to the clergy, the religious leaders in the country?
Well, Lynda, what we see today basically is Pope Francis doing what is in many ways the least favorite aspect for him of these foreign journeys. I mean, he always has to do these big formal things with the country's political leaders and with the country's bishops. Where you will really see Francis come alive, of course, is when he visits a hospital for sick children later in his itinerary, or when he visits a prison, when he is able to be in contact with ordinary people. But clearly, his message today has been, in some ways, a recapitulation of his core social and political concerns. You heard him blasting corruption. And by the way, not just corruption in the Mexican state, but also corruption in the Mexican church. I mean, he called on the bishops today quite bluntly not to be afraid of transparency. And I don't think it's escaped the attention of many people in Mexico that he delivered that message at the same moment that a scandal has been sort of percolating locally about whether the country's president fast-tracked an annulment from senior church officials for his wife so they could be married in the church in exchange for political favors. You also heard him insisting to the Mexican bishops today that they need to step up their efforts on behalf of immigrants, applauding them for what they have done so far. So, you know, as you've indicated, Lynda, very clearly a pope who, on the one hand, wants to style this trip as pastoral and not political, and yet, on the other hand, not at all shy about delivering a fairly pointed social and political message.
And John, Pope Francis also said he will ask for a blessing from the patron saint of Mexico, Our Lady of Guadalupe. What does she mean to the people of Mexico, and not just the Catholics, but the people that, you know, the secular people in Mexico?
Well, listen, I mean, the truth is Guadalupe means the world to Mexico. I mean, actually, there are many people who believe that one of the reasons Mexico has not been as hard hit by the explosion of evangelical and Pentecostal Christianity as other parts of Latin America is precisely because the depth and the fervor of the devotion that Mexican Catholics have to Our Lady of Guadalupe. And of course, for Pope Francis, the Virgin Mary is all important. He begins every foreign trip, and he began this trip to Cuba and Mexico by going across town in Rome to pray at the Basilica of St. Mary Major in Rome before an image of Mary as the Salus Populus Romani, that is the protector of the Roman people. And as a Latin American, obviously, you know, for him, Guadalupe means the world. So the sincerity of his own devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe is obviously going to play extraordinarily well in Mexico, where you could make the argument, you know, that forget the Mexican flag, forget the national soccer team, forget, you know, the sombrero or mariachi bands. You know, the real symbol of Mexican identity is Our Lady of Guadalupe. And the fact that the Pope is paying tribute to her today, that is going to play extraordinarily well at the grassroots, Lynda.
And John, I was just talking to Shasta Darlington, our reporter there, about the Pope's message regarding corruption in Mexico. We know, of course, that corruption and crime is rife there. Can the Pope's message for justice make a real difference?
Well, I mean, that's something that's only going to be measured going forward. But I think we should say that, you know, one should not underestimate the political muscle of this Pope. I mean, we've seen him play a role in paving the way for the restoration of relations between the United States and Cuba. We've seen him help stop a proposed Western offensive in Syria a couple of years ago to try to bring down the regime of Bashar al-Assad. I mean, around the world, you know, we have seen Francis not merely, you know, engaging in pious rhetoric, but making a real difference on the ground. Now, we're going to have to see how receptive the political class in Mexico is to this message. But, you know, quite often when the Pope wades into political waters, the smart money is not against him.
Okay, John Allen, we would like to continue that discussion, but I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk to you in the coming days. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Sure.
Well, the next big event for the Pope will be a Mass at one of Mexico's most important shrines, the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Stay tuned for our live coverage throughout his visit right here on CNN.